What you can see here is Sarah from River Bluff Architects, the lady on the right. This pointer doesn't show up very well. And the back of Todd's head. Todd's over manning the computer over there. We have a map of the district here. We are throwing out ideas. Todd's recording them as fast as he can. What happens in a process like this is you quickly come up with ideas and just as quickly come up with roadblocks. Whoops, okay, what's the problem there? So it's a process where you get to a point where you stop, you move on to the next idea, and you continue. Let's see. This is showing that we had developed up to scenario 7, and this is challenging enough that even Frank is having to take a pause. We've developed a lot of ideas. By the end of the second day, we had developed 9 different ideas. Not a single one was a comprehensive plan. They all had roadblocks to be addressed. But what we had done is we'd identified sort of the critical path issues, the critical roadblocks that needed to be solved that allowed us to put together a draft plan on the last day. And so what I'd like to do now is present that draft plan. Before I do, we wanted to present 2 scenarios. This is something that every school has to answer, and you will have to answer. If you decide to adopt a draft plan, you're going to have to answer the question, well, what's wrong with just staying the way we are? We call that the existing scenario, the status quo. So we're going to start off with a description of the status quo. You are maintaining 23 core educational facilities. You have additional special purpose facilities like Hilliard, Colgan, and Webster, and administrative facilities, and we'll discuss those in a few. But we're focusing for this moment on those core facilities. You are maintaining about 1.4 million square feet in those 23 facilities. When we project out the costs to heat and cool and maintain those buildings, continue and provide building renewal over the next 30 years, we are projecting that you will spend, and I know it's a big number, but you never look at the actual amounts that you spend over 30 years, about $438 million. That's the cost that we're projecting that you'll spend. Your educational adequacy, your score, is 58 out of that possible 100 scale, which is in the borderline range, if you remember correctly. The cost-benefit ratio is 55.48. That doesn't mean anything until you can compare it to other scenarios. This is what your existing configuration looks like. It may be difficult to see, but you have 16 elementary facilities, 4 middle schools, 3 grades 9 through 12 high schools. This is going to be a challenge for you to see as well. This is a document we call, or a process we call Scenario Modeler. This is where we feed all of our information, and it models the cost effectiveness of each scenario. What's important for you to note here is the educational adequacy shown at 5809, the cost-benefit ratio at 55. And then the other thing that you can't see is capacity. Every change we make affects capacity, and so when you consider adding a building or taking out a building, it affects capacity. We are starting now with something that shows that we need a space for 907 students. Now, why is that, you ask? You know they're fitting right now. That's right, you have the space to fit the students, but you don't have the proper space. When Frank talked about the space required for special education programs, the space required for small learning communities, the space to accommodate the educational vision you would like in the future, if you started with that, which is what we've done, you would actually need additional space. You're going to see how this plays out in a draft master plan in a moment. So, what you're going to see, every master plan option is divided into 4 actions: retire, renovate, expand, and build. Those are the 4 actions. You're also going to note one other thing, and that is, as is typical with master plans, where you're putting together the end, you're beginning with the end in mind, you're thinking out 30 years, you are putting together costs that are going to be in excess of what you can afford in the very first year or the very first implementation. So you're going to phase that to try and put the dollars in alignment with the district's capacity to fund it. So what I'm going to present is a phased master plan to be implemented over 30-year time period. We start with buildings to be retired. We retire 2 of the buildings that create the greatest challenges of providing educational excellence cost effectively. That's Hall and Humboldt. We consider renovating Benton, Central, Lafayette, Lindbergh, Pershing, Field, Coleman, and Skaith, and we're going to show you a more detailed explanation in a second, so bear with me. We're going to expand Field, Pershing, and Skaith. We're going to build a new Midtown K-5 elementary school. By the way, there should be the master plan summary sheet should have been handed out. Have they been handed out? Very good. All right, Todd. Oh, well, before you do, one thing I want to note. The district maintains more buildings than the 23 we were talking about tonight. You have, as I mentioned, special programs in Webster, Colgan, and Hilliard, and you have non-instructional facilities. Those, additionally, preschool centers are a big part of what will be eventually in this plan. For tonight's purposes, they are beyond the scope of what we can do. Further study is needed. These will be incorporated into the plan as it moves forward. Tonight, we're simply going to focus on the core educational facilities. Now, Todd, here's where you are now. Todd is going to take you on a quick tour of what the proposed is. We are switching out of programs from a PowerPoint to a program called SketchUp, which is going to help us visually understand. Here you see Hall, which is lit up, and I don't know, I feel like I need to get back here so I can get an idea of what you're seeing. That's all right. All right. I can see that you have some challenges. I'm going to help you narrate. Hall is a building that with phase 1 gets retired, so you'll see that building goes to gray. Let's go to the next one, Todd. Humboldt does the same thing. So those buildings are retired. All right, Todd, if you'll move on to the next. Okay, Benton goes through a comprehensive renovation in the first phase, which includes making it ready for 21st century. Learning Central goes through a renovation. It's a smaller renovation. Its major renovation is in phase 2. Phase 1 includes renovating the, and you can slow down there, Todd. Phase 2 includes air conditioning the auditorium, providing some physical education upgrades, and that. Lafayette is also in phase 1, and that includes some remodeling of the biology labs and air conditioning. All right, Todd, thank you. Move on. Lindbergh gets renovated. What you saw is its shape go opaque. That means it's renovated. Now, what it gets is it gets air conditioning and it gets security upgrades. Those are the planning principles, those overarching principles that the community meant. Next facility, Todd. Pershing not only gets those upgrades, but it also gets an addition. A 6th classroom addition, anticipating phase 2 and helping accommodate changing enrollments from changing schools. Field, I believe, also gets renovated as well as a 6th classroom addition. So the renovations include air conditioning, security upgrades, and a 6th classroom addition. Again, because we're closing 2 facilities retiring 2 facilities in the proximity, that will be one of the ways that the additional student body will be picked up. Coleman will get renovated with air conditioning and security upgrades. And the next facility, Todd. Skaith will also get security upgrades, air conditioning, and a 6th classroom addition. Continue on. Okay, a new K-5 Midtown elementary school will be built with 1 flex classroom for additional enrollment growth. So let's continue on. That's sort of, that's the outcome of that. So let's move on, Todd, now to phase 2. Okay. Phase 2, you're starting with, is there a way you can get into the PowerPoint so we can, okay, thank you. Phase 2, what you're noting is that you are starting from, actually, I'm going to go back and comment on phase 1. Phase 1 takes you from 16 elementary schools to 15 elementary schools. You are staying with 4 middle schools of the same grade configuration. 3 high schools remain in the same grade configuration. Your educational adequacy. The yellow shows the change in the educational adequacy, so you can see that you've gone